In this edition of Fix the Flick, we'll be looking at 2012's Prometheus. When Ridley Scott announced that he would be returning to the director's chair for a follow-up, lead-in, to his sci-fi horror masterpiece, a lot of people were justifiably pumped. Finally, we were going to get answers, not only to 30-year-old questions about the original Alien, but we were going to see some deep philosophical questions addressed as well, and all of it painted with some absolutely stunning cinematography. But alas, that was not to be. What we got instead were characters that made painfully stupid decisions and a plot that provided exactly zero answers, profound or otherwise. In the end, all Prometheus was really good-looking sequel bait.
My name is Elizabeth Shaw, and I'm still searching.
We should have been terrified for the characters because we liked them, not because we were waiting to see how they'd die. We should have been invested in the story because it was well told, not because it promised a new type of alien. Prometheus should have been a horror movie with a brain, and a sci-fi movie with a heart. So, with that in mind, let's try to fix Prometheus. The movie begins the same, but we start with a clear wide shot of the planet so we know that it's Earth. Then we get those great tracking shots, telling us that this is set before there was life on the planet. Finally, we see the engineer drink the goo, disintegrate, and seed the Earth with his DNA. We then cut to the Prometheus in the present. All of the characters in the original Alien were blue-collar, working-class people, which made us care about them because they were relatable. So, we were scared for them when they were forced into a situation beyond their knowledge and control. The scientist in the released movie had pure motives with no agenda, which gave them no reason to make reckless and unscientific decisions throughout the film.
Yeah, but I'm trying, it's not good down.
Hold down. Hold. Stop it. David, contain it.
So, instead of our main character being a scientist, Elizabeth Shaw is the captain of the Prometheus. Yannick is her first mate, and Fifield is the ship's security officer. In her quarters, we see Captain Shaw crying over the picture of a sonogram when Yannick comes in. He asks her whether or not they're going to accept Meredith Vickers' proposal. Shaw notes that Vickers wasn't very forthcoming on exactly what the mission is or what it hopes to accomplish. Yannick points out that Shaw's been through a lot recently, and that maybe the work will take her mind off of things. He also jokingly adds that Wayland Industries is putting up $1 trillion for the trip. Their familiarity shows us that they're very close and know each other very well. So, Captain Shaw tells him to let Vickers know that they accept. Having the ship's crew as the protagonists explains why they would go to the other side of the universe without all the details beforehand. They're just hired help. And that's clearly how they're seen, as there's a separation between the ship's crew and the shady corporate scientists.
No offense, but I've been asleep 2 years. I ain't here to be your friend. I'm here to make money. Okay?
We then get the mission briefing led by Dr. Holloway. His theory is that the engineers seeded Earth with life, not specifically humans. This fits with the whole pesky evolution thing, instead of just ignoring it. And in this version, Wayland doesn't fake his death for no reason. He's actually doing the opposite. In the hologram, we see signs that he's trying to hide how frail he is. After the briefing, Shaw asks Holloway what he expects to find. He says that if his theory is right, they might just find out who created humanity. Fingering the crucifix around her neck, Shaw says that she already knows who created her. It's clear the whole idea of meeting their maker offends her, but her passion suggests that she protests too much. They land the Prometheus, discover the dome, and organize the first outing. In this version, Holloway doesn't have a problem with David. Captain Shaw does. She asks why David wears a suit when he doesn't need one, and he tells her that he's designed to appear more human. Shaw says that synthetics made in the image of humans is just vanity. Holloway asks why they wouldn't create an android if it was possible. Shaw answers that just because you can create something doesn't mean you should. With a flirty smile at Shaw, Holloway admits that some of them look better in their suits than others. Then they go inside the dome, but they don't take their helmets off. One, because grainy video feeds and harsh audio make things scarier.
After you.
After you.
Careful.
Prometheus, we're going in.
And 2, no scientist in their right mind would expose themselves on an alien planet after checking the atmosphere for all of 20 seconds. Whew. They go on to discover the urn room. Not the one with the big head, the other one. The one with all the stacked urns. We see that the urns are coded within subgroups, which tells us that they're samples from different experiments. This explains why the black goo does different things whenever it's used, because there are different versions of it. They bag one of the urns and prepare to take it back to the ship for study. Vickers orders Milburn to move deeper into the structure to continue mapping, and Shaw sends Yannick to keep an eye on him. Meanwhile, the rest of the party return to the ship before the storm hits. There are no holograms out of nowhere, no severed alien head, just the monumental discovery of an alien laboratory. They use David to study the black goo as a quarantine precaution, because that's what good scientists do. They discover that it has all of the basic chromosomes that all life on Earth is based on, and they theorize that the black goo was used to begin life on Earth, reasoning that it's some kind of mutagen that creates specific changes in any organism it comes in contact with. David overhears Dr. Holloway say that it's a shame they have nothing to experiment on. Now it's a little clearer why David spikes his drink, which we see him do before he's standing right next to him. And Holloway's not disappointed with the greatest discovery in human history. No, in this version, he's drinking to celebrate it. Shaw is the one who's drowning her sorrows. Holloway goes over and asks why she's not happy. She shows him her crucifix and says that she used to be sure of where she came from and why. But now, not so much. He says that their discovery shouldn't be too much for someone of faith. Shaw downs another drink and says that her faith has been stretched thin lately. She goes on to tell him that she spent a lot of money on artificial insemination and that recently she lost the baby. To get her mind off of things, Holloway flirts with her some more and they end up having sex. But no time to cuddle because Yannick contacts the ship with a discovery. That's right, in this version, the guy with the mapping equipment doesn't get lost. Instead, Yannick and Milburn find the big headroom. And instead of no crew being on duty whatsoever, everyone on the bridge watches them enter the room and they see the frescoes on the walls. They depict the engineers discovering the black goo, meaning that they didn't make it, they were just experimenting with it. And this is another blow to Shaw's faith. Not only have they proven that humans weren't created by God, but their creators didn't seem to have any more answers than humanity does. Just like in the original, the change in the atmosphere has caused the urns to leak the black goo all over the floor. And just like in the original, it's mutated the worms. But in this version, Milburn doesn't treat the clearly dangerous, obviously aggressive alien snake like a puppy. Instead, he and Yannick try to leave, but the video cuts out and everyone on the ship is forced to listen as they're horribly attacked. Once the storm has passed, Captain Holloway leads a rescue party, with Holloway staying behind because he's not feeling well. As they're searching for Yannick and Milburn, David breaks away and finds the bridge room. Meanwhile, back on the ship, Holloway's condition worsens. As David learns about the engineer's technology, Holloway begins to transform into what looks like a xenomorph. While David makes the epic discovery of the sleeping engineer, the mutated Holloway begins to move around the ship. Shaw and the rescue party find the snakes feeding on Yannick and Milburn's bodies. And now, Shaw's first mate and best friend is dead. Furious, she tells Vickers that they are leaving. Vickers says that they aren't going anywhere until they get what they came for. Shaw then demands to know what that is. She asks what could be so important to justify risking everyone's lives. But the answer is cut short when they hear commotion from the ship. The attack scene plays out the same, except that it makes more sense for them to be attacked from something already inside the ship catching them unawares, rather than them opening the door despite something clearly being wrong. I mean, he was folded in half and no one batted an eyelash. And Holloway mutating into a xenomorph is a little easier to swallow than the movie not bothering to explain why someone was randomly zombified. Because Holloway was on the ship when he mutated, Captain Shaw calls for a complete quarantine protocol, and that's when David tells her that she's pregnant. The whole alien cesarean scene plays out the same. However, there was no need to say that the medpod was only calibrated for a guy. Yes, the medpod was for Wayland, and it did add some tension. That an alien fetus was tearing its way out of her womb, there was enough tension already. After that, Shaw discovers Wayland, the same way she did in the released version. The only difference is that Wayland wasn't faking being dead. He was just lying about having advanced stage cancer. And a titan of industry hiding a debilitating illness is a better reason for him to stay hidden rather than him stowing away for reasons. Shaw is horrified that several people have died all for him to have more life. And as the captain, she feels that all of the deaths are her responsibility. She insists that the mission has failed and that they are going home. Realizing he can't get back to Earth without her help, Wayland gives her the same speech about finding out why humanity was created, finding out the meaning of all of their lives. At this point, Shaw has been stripped of almost everything, and she really has nothing left but to find out why the engineers created them. Before they leave, Shaw tells Fifield that no matter what happens, none of what they found can get back to Earth. Meaning not just the goo, but the terrible knowledge they've uncovered as well. They reach the engineer and revive him, just like in the released version. But when they speak to the engineer, he speaks back. He studies them intently, and then, with contempt, he says something that David translates to, "You are not what was intended." That's the final nail in the coffin for Shaw's faith. Humanity is revealed to be a failed experiment, a mistake. As far as why the engineers did what they did, this is a better answer than no answer. The engineer proceeds to rip David's head off and starts killing everyone. No! Captain Shaw runs away and reaches the surface. She tells Fifield what's happening and what's at stake. Then he decides to use the Prometheus as a bullet to crash the engineer's ship. And this gives his character a little arc considering his mercenary mentality at the beginning of the movie. The Prometheus then smashes into the alien ship and it crashes. And as great as the Prometheus school of running away from things is, it doesn't go down like that. Vickers is tripped up by a piece of falling debris, which is just enough time for her to get crushed when the ship initially hits the surface. And Shaw simply rolls out of the way. Just like in the released movie, Shaw makes her way to the lifeboat. And just like in the released movie, she's attacked by the engineer. With the engineer dead, Shaw's left alone with David, and she says that she's going to die. She grabs the release on her helmet, preparing to kill herself. But David says that while the damage to the alien ship makes it impossible for it to travel to Earth, he thinks that it can return to its point of origin. Now Shaw has the opportunity to experience what happens when we die, meeting her maker, so to speak. But she decides to go on to the engineer's homeworld to seek the answers that have been plaguing her throughout the movie. This ending isn't so much of a cliffhanger as the original was. It's more rhetorical, begging the question, which would you choose? To trust your faith and go into the unknown, or ride into hell to know the answer to why? Hopefully this version answers most of the specific questions raised by the story, and provides a good setup to ponder the more profound ones. So, that's how I would fix Prometheus. Are there any movies that you think are in need of repair? If so, email me at the link down below or post a comment. And remember to click like and subscribe if you want to see more movies get fixed. Until next time, I'm Mr. Fix-It for Fix the Flick.